joining us today. My name is Zach Knoll. I'm a fifth-year apprentice here in the local apprenticeship for electrical, IBEW 112 and JATC. I'm here today to share about my experience in the apprenticeship. I've had over 10,000 on-the-job training hours over the last 5 years and over 1,000 hours in a classroom. Part of my on-the-job training was actually involving fiber optics and low voltage, houses, working on schools. Delta High School was one of the first projects that I did for commercial. And then I've also been on power generation plants and industrial manufacturing. And I'm going to finish up here in June of next year.
Hi, my name is Cole Purvis. I'm a senior at Delta High School this year, so I'll be finishing up high school pretty soon. I'm an intern at WRPS this year. It's my 4th week, so far it's going pretty good. I'll be in an engineering internship, so I'm learning how that stuff works, and I'll be using that knowledge to go into college next year. And get my education at WSU next year and get my engineering degree. Thank you for taking the time and coming out here to listen to us, but, you know.
Good afternoon, my name is Julia Garcia. I am a senior at Pasco High. I attend TriTech for the firefighting program. It is my 2nd year. I also participate in a work-based learning program, PMT, with Cadillac Medical Regional Center.
Hi, my name is Allie Winslow. I am a pre-nursing student at TriTech and a senior at Hanford High School. Thank you for believing in us, for hosting students at your job sites and your offices and your boardrooms to give students experience in careers.
Hello, I'm Mario Martinez, and I'm a member of the Selfridge High Class of 2026. We appreciate your time and support.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Bachard, a teacher at Pasco's Chiawana High School, the largest high school in the state. As educators, we long for every student to participate in rich career-connected learning experiences like these students were able to do. Unfortunately, these opportunities aren't available to all students. Your help is needed to expand experiences like the school-based internship my bioethics class recently piloted with Jacobs and the STEM Foundation. We coupled in-class STEM Like Me style activities with an on-site and problem-based learning experience. My students worked in small teams with Jacobs staff, and along with my classroom instruction, they created and presented unique solutions to a real Hanford worksite challenge. Prior to this 5-week experience, the vast majority of my students had little or no knowledge of the different careers out at Hanford. Yet, when surveyed upon completion of the program, nearly 90% stated that they would consider a career at Hanford. In fact, last month, at NSA's Great Connect Tri-Cities event, Carlos is here with us today. Carlos, one of my students, happened to see one of his Jacobs volunteers at her booth. He told her he'd been thinking of a career in law enforcement before, but because of his experiences through this program, he now has plans to become an industrial hygienist or maybe something in the radiological field. Kids can't be what they can't see. Carlos would never have known about these careers at Hanford without your investment. Thank you for all you do for our kids.
Wow. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Matt Hammer, and I am the president of the STEM Foundation Board of Directors, and I'm also a proud lifetime resident of the Tri-Cities community. I want to start by asking our elected officials and their representatives to please stand up And let's recognize you with a big round of applause. My Aunt Vanilla. I'd also like to thank our STEM Foundation directors and other sponsors for hosting this event. Their names can be found on the program that's in front of you on the table. So many of you were here last November, where the STEM Foundation celebrated our 10th anniversary. And at that time, we rolled out our big vision for the next decade, and we call that Mid-Columbia STEM 2030. And it really encapsulates two things we're trying to do. Number one, by 2030, we want to have 70% of our students on track to gain a post-secondary credential by the age of 26. Let you take that one in. So 70% of these folks getting a post-secondary credential by age of 26. And secondly, we want our schools, from our elementaries all the way through universities, to be known as national models for innovative STEM learning and community engagement. Achieving this vision is not going to be easy, but for those of you that have lived in this community for a long time, we know that the Tri-Cities really doesn't back down from a challenge. Whether that's standing up the branch campus for WSU Tri-Cities, or creating our own STEM high school, Delta, we've really never backed down from the challenge. We know that the two most important things are creating a very clear vision and all working together to achieve that. For those of you who have heard the term silver tsunami, you know that the workforce, not only in the Tri-Cities but across the nation, is undergoing a monumental shift. At Hanford alone, over half of the workforce is going to be eligible for retirement in the next 5 years. Anyone who's been to the doctor lately in our community knows that there is a pretty traumatic shortage of trained medical professionals in our community. And we have agribusiness, we have food processing. What used to be called the blue-collar worker is now being termed the new-collar worker. So we're seeing manual labor being replaced by a highly skilled workforce that's using very innovative technologies. Just for a moment, and that kind of carries on to what Melanie was just up here talking about, but just imagine what a second grader today is up against trying to create a career for 2030, the barriers that are in place. I'm not going to name them all, it's not my expertise, but we know there's social barriers, there's economic barriers, and there's educational barriers. And it's daunting. But we know, and I know from meeting some of these kids, that there's no shortage of talent in our community, and there's no shortage of desire. You just saw it. It's really a matter of connecting the talent and the desire of our students with opportunities. And that's really why we're here today. So at this luncheon, we're going to narrow the scope of what we're going to talk about to one single thing that's really, really important. And you're going to hear this term quite a bit. It's called career-connected learning. Last year, we talked about a lot of local solutions. This year, the event's even bigger. We've got people from across the state coming here to help identify new solutions and build new partnerships to scale what we're doing. In 2016, I traveled with some foundation members and staff to the Microsoft campus in Redmond, where I had the opportunity to join a discussion with the governor about how to expand this career-connected learning across our state. And that actually marked the beginning of what we're here today talking about, a 3-year planning effort. And this year, I'm happy to say that the Washington State Legislature has passed a bill to formally launch what they're calling Career Connect Washington. And it's got the intent of expanding really high-quality, career-connected learning experiences across the state. It's really designed to help students to get on this pathway to a career. And just as importantly, it's designed to help our employers meet the needs of the workforce of the future. So through this legislation, the state is invested in launching in a series of regional networks that follow the boundaries of the 9 educational service districts. And through a competitive process, again, very proud to report that our foundation has been named the convener of the Southeastern Washington Network, which is going to expand our boundaries from what it is today here where the Tri-Cities focus really to the 23 school districts that make up the ESD 123. So this thing is getting bigger as of today. As part of that legislation, there's going to be a career-connected learning coordinator embedded in each of the ESDs. And I want to give special thanks to Darcy Weisner, the superintendent of ESD 123. I just got to meet Darcy here today. Special thanks to you and your staff for partnering with us on these initiatives that are really going to be important in our local region. Now I'd like to introduce Brian Jeffries. He's the Policy Director from Partnership for Learning. And Partnership for Learning is the education foundation that's part of the Washington Roundtable. Brian brings more than 25 years of experience in education practice and policy for the Partnership for Learning. He spent nearly 10 years at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, serving as a senior advisor on numerous issues, including high school graduation, career, and technical education. He also worked as a policy consultant for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So today, Brian's going to provide a brief sampler of some of the resources and the research that the group has invested in. It's really going to help light the way to us getting 70% of our students having a post-secondary credential by the age of 26. And he's also graciously agreed to return in the coming months from his office in Seattle to help us work on these issues. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Good afternoon. There's a sign here that says don't step back. The ledge on the stage is right there, so I'm glad somebody put that there. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Brian Jeffries. I'm the Policy Director, as mentioned, with the Washington Roundtable and its Education Foundation of Partnership for Learning. Just to give very briefly, the Washington Roundtable is a statewide organization of senior executives from our state's largest private employers. So companies with brand recognition like Boeing, Microsoft, Starbucks, Alaska Airlines, but also include senior executives from the Pac Northwest Lab and Avista and companies like that. I focus exclusively on education issues. So our board, doing some work up through 2015, made a decision to adopt a goal in early 2016 that 70% of Washington high school students of the class of 2030 would go on to earn a post-secondary credential by age 26. And those credentials include degrees, certificates, apprenticeships. And we didn't choose that number of 70%, and you didn't choose that number as your network out of a hat. That is the percentage of jobs in our state that will go to people who have those credentials. And as part of setting this goal, we looked at job growth in our state and job openings and discovered that over the next several years, so looking at 5 years, there will be over 740,000 job openings in our state due to retirements and due to the economy and job growth. 70% of the people attaining those jobs will need some kind of post-secondary credential. So that's why we set that goal. And I want to be specific in the use of our language around that goal. It doesn't say 70% of graduates. It says 70% of high school students will go on and earn that credential. But to give you some baseline, the first class that we looked at on the percentage of students by age 26 who went on and earned the post-secondary credential, only 33% of the students of the high school class of 2006, that includes graduates and non-graduates, went on to earn a credential by age 26. So that's the high school class of 2006. We're projecting for the high school class of 2017 that 41% of students will go on to earn a credential. So the state has made some progress over the last several years, but clearly we're not making progress fast enough. That growth, that 33% to 41% over from 2006 to 2017, because we're a STEM room, we get the math of this, it's less than 1% annual growth per year. To get from our 41% to the 70%, we have to more than triple that percentage to hit the target. Now, because of my board being business leaders, they say, hey, let's not wait for 2030 and look at one singular goal. How can we break this up into more manageable goals? And so to hit that target, we looked at states that are leading the nation on 4 specific targets, so sub-targets of the 70% goal. And just to do some reality setting, to hit our goal, for that class of 2030, 95% of students need to graduate from high school. Of those graduates, 95% need to enroll in some form of post-secondary education and training. 70% of those students need to complete. And even if we do all of those things, hit all of those targets, we need to recapture or re-engage 7% of the students who somehow fell out of the education and training pipeline. But with our current numbers, our 4-year high school graduation rate is 83%. Our post-secondary enrollment is 75%. I want to hold on that number for a moment. While many people think of Washington as being a highly educated state, the reality is that we're one of the bottom states in the percentage of our high school graduates who enroll in post-secondary. The numbers change, but we're around 48th. So we've got some big changes to do, and when we looked over time between the class of 06 to the class of 17, we've made no gains at all in the percentage of students who enroll in post-secondary. So the reality of that is that we can't hit the 70% target if kids aren't even launched into post-secondary. So that is our biggest opportunity. What the roundtable views is our biggest opportunity in the short term is that we have to dramatically increase the number and percentage of high school graduates who go on to post-secondary. So just to kind of wrap that up, most of the work that we do as the Washington Roundtable is Olympia focused, but we're starting to look at other practices. We've put a lot of our political capital in the past legislative session, making sure that the regional networks like this were funded and are supported and will continue to support, and we're putting out a lot of information. So I ran through a bunch of numbers really quickly. Here up on the screen are some websites that you can go to gain resources. We have a report called The Path to 70% Credential Attainment that has a lot of more information about the numbers I just shared. So thank you all for the work that you're doing. We know that the solutions, and no slight to our wonderful state superintendent, the solutions to this work doesn't happen in Olympia. The solutions and getting to our 70% goal is really about the work in rooms like this. So thank you for that work, and to the extent that we can be supportive, count on the Washington Roundtable and the Partnership for Learning in being a partner and a champion for that work. So thank you all.
inviting us today. My name is Rebecca Woods. I have the privilege of serving as the president of Columbia Basin College, and I'm also a member of the STEM Foundation Board of Directors. We're pleased to have Chris Reichtel, the state superintendent for public instruction, with us this afternoon, as well as Chris Johnson, the president and CEO of the Association for Washington Business. Both of them are going to have some time to share with us their state perspective on career-connected learning, as well as talking with us about some ways for expanded engagement on our part and how that can help close the skills gap in Washington. So now I want to introduce, we'll start with Chris Reichtel. He is currently serving in his first term as the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. He has dedicated his entire career to public education, serving as a high school teacher, a local school board member, a state legislator, budget and policy executive for the state's community and technical college system. Chris graduated summa cum laude from Washington State University.
Go Cougs!
I've learned being new to Washington, I need to pause after I say that. There's something that apparently comes after that. Yes, all right.
Good job.
Thank you, I've learned. And also earned a master's degree in public administration from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Chris and his wife Kim live in historic Tumwater with their 2 children, Carter and Kennedy. So welcome, Chris. Thank you for being with us.
So Brian wasn't kidding. I'm not going to fall off the back of this thing. We're mic'd up right here. Make sure you can see me because I'm a little more vertically challenged than my good friend Chris, who will also get a moment here. Thank you for being here. It is great to see you. It is great to be back here. People think I just, blow sunshine everywhere I go, but I don't. I'm very honest in every audience. And sometimes I'm in communities that have a lot more work to do in terms of building out their networks, creating these opportunities for students, and essentially connecting learning to the economy. The Tri-Cities does it as well as anybody. And I've said that before, and I'll say it again, that you are a model. I think GSI in Spokane is doing some great stuff. We certainly see pockets of excellence around the state. You all have been very effective for quite a while. You have a lot of strengths to build from. From our perspective at OSPI, and what a horrible 4-letter acronym thing that is. You didn't probably even know this in your ballot a few years ago, but you voted for me. I'm sure everyone in the room did. We're a state that elects our superintendent of schools, and then I, by virtue of that role, also serve on our state board of education. I saw here earlier, I think I see him back, Jeff Estes is here with us as well. From this area, you actually have 2 members of the state board of education that live in this community. 3, he's looking at me. Oh, okay, that was 2. You're growing exponentially. Congratulations, Tri-Cities. You now dominate the State Board of Education. My work here is done. See you later. Between the work of the State Board, us, and obviously our partnerships in business, as you heard from Brian, and our partnerships in labor, we do think there is a role in the Olympia framework to build a foundation, a policy structure that then allows us to get out of the way. And by example of that, we're a state now that moved our last culminating assessment down to the 10th grade. The logic of that, I spoke with many of you for the last 2 years about this, was we have to redesign our high school system. We have to actually redesign most of our K-12 system, but our high school system in particular is not serving America well. Your state alone spends roughly $2 billion on the junior and senior year. Now think back to your junior and senior year. How'd that go? Now we've filled that up with a lot more expectations. Students are taking a lot more credits than they used to. Sometimes that's a stress and a duress for some of them. But for many, they needed to be pushed into these meaningful areas of content. And I don't just mean math and science and English language arts, but lots of content. So we spent a lot of resource in those 2 years only to get the numbers that you saw Brian post here earlier. 18% of them are not graduating at all. And probably another 20% or so don't pursue anything post-secondary, at least not in the near term. They don't pursue apprenticeships, they don't pursue CTCs, they don't pursue private providers of training, and they don't pursue universities. In this economy, they're probably getting jobs, which is great. What we always ask about, though, is when we do hit recession, what is the opportunity for those students then? So we're building this framework to say, let's move that last assessment to 10th grade. Let's revisit high school and beyond plans. Let's understand in a more intimate way what students really care about at an earlier age. and begin to rethink the purpose of the junior-senior year so that it is entirely about launching. It is entirely a springboard to the plan and the vision and the passion of that young person. And when you start to think that way, then you need to redesign high school graduation pathways so it's not just a Smarter Balance test or SAT or an ACT, all of which are still available. But with the vote of the state board last week, you now have a course-based pathway to graduation through career and technical education. Students who are really passionate about being in that space, and it's, many of you knew this traditionally as trades, but it's a lot more than that. It's business, it's finance, it's healthcare. It is a ton of things that don't traditionally need academic training in a university setting to achieve economic opportunity. That pathway to graduation now sits right in front of us in the state of Washington. So very big things are happening for us. I have a challenge though for everyone in the room because most of you fall in one of the three areas I'm going to talk about. If you are in business, you have an enormous opportunity to step up in this transformational vision as we completely redesign the junior-senior year and spend those $30,000 per kid. It's $15,000 a year, so we spend $30,000 a year over 2 years for every junior-senior in this launch. If we repurpose that concept, if we thought differently about how to do this, a bunch of them would say, I'm ready to go to work. And we'd say, but we want you to hit that stat. We want it to be tangible enough that you're getting work experience and maybe even income, but you need to leave with a skill set that's transferable. We need certificates on the other end of that. We need that to parlay into associate degrees. And our incredible CTC system, ranked #1 in the United States, by the way. Congratulations, Rebecca. Very good. We need those experiences and work to really launch students to other pathways. One of the things that my 14 years of the CTC system I got to be a part of was this idea of eliminating anything that's a terminal degree. There's no such thing as earning a certificate that'll get you one job. Everything has to lead to something else. So my challenge for business is this: as we get into this career-connected world, as these systems are built out, as the intermediaries are built out, you have an incredible STEM network here that's taking a leadership role. You have Darcy and ESD 123 with incredible access to your school districts in the area. We have to formalize, and I am challenging business to think about what it would look like for you to take on students, even as early as high school students, and certainly community college and university students. What does it look like to bring them on your job site to give them that training? Sometimes paid, sometimes unpaid, but what structured learning can we build in that environment? To higher ed, I need you to stop obsessing about Algebra 2. Okay? It's a 130-year-old concept. I appreciate it. I'm solving for X and Y every day. It's usually Democrats and Republicans and Olympia, right? Those are two unknowns, by the way, if you got the math joke, okay? So it's important in an academic setting that we have these linear pathways. It is even more important that we build out quantitative reasoning and analytics and real-world mathematics that has a connection to work. And to do that, you have to honor that in the transfer system. Our CTCs have to take that applied geometry course that the student takes their junior or senior year because they're in a construction program or they're fabricating, and they got to honor that math and build on it. And today we look at that student and say, ooh, there's a couple places we can take you, but we really need you to take a placement test, and then we need you to remediate, and then we need you in an academic math class. Oh, you wanted to be a welder? Why did we ever have you in an academic algebra 2 class? That's weird. So that's my challenge for higher ed, is open up and rethink what it means for pathways. And my challenge for K-12 in my system is we have to be a lot more intentional about how we graduate students. You have the opportunity today, even though it is hard and we're going to keep breaking down barriers, you have the ability today to have the student experience be 16 core credits, which means there are 8 credits of flexibility in that system. You can build the equivalent of a year and a half of opportunity for students that is not this linear progression of everyone to a university. But candidly, we get a little frustrated by the lack of support in our system in terms of counseling and guidance and obviously mental health supports and the things that wrap around kids. So we're really focused on that, but you gotta honor the fact that not every kid's headed to a university. And our systems are still largely designed around that. So, thank you very much for the work, for the relationships and the partnerships. Business, take on young people, take risk, figure out what that looks like. Work with the network, work with ESDs and school districts to figure out how to give them credit when they're there. Higher ed, completely rethink the way you move students through the system, particularly around quantitative reasoning. And K-12, get serious about graduating students who want to spend a lot more time learning by touching and learning by being on a job site instead of sitting in rows of 6 by 5. That is your challenge as well. It's Chris's turn. You're going to be introduced, and then you're going to go, and then we're going to answer the toughest questions in the world. Outstanding.
So now I'd like to introduce Chris Johnson, as I said, President and CEO of the Association for Washington Business. He leads the state's oldest and largest statewide business organization, as well as oversees the AWB Institute, which focuses on manufacturing, workforce development, and education. Chris serves on many boards, including the Governor's Career Connect Washington Task Force. Prior to joining AWB, Chris was the president of the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce in Minnesota, and before that he served as our own Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce president. He's a graduate of the University of Montana Western and the U.S. Chamber Institute program. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon. Really? We're doing it all over again. Good afternoon. Okay, you're awake. Thank you. First, Deb, thank you for inviting me back here. I got time? Okay, great. So I feel like when Deb called and said, hey, can you come back over here and talk about what employers are doing? I said, sure. But you still owe me, you know. Because 15 years ago, you stole Lori Matson away from me when she worked for me at Junior Achievement to run the chamber. Lori, I know you're somewhere in here, but congratulations on 15 years at the chamber today, so thank you. And when it comes to talking about career-connected learning and having a strong partner at OSPI, we have a great partner, Chris. And we are working hard every day to create opportunities for you that are the employers in this room to create experiential learning opportunities to get young people into your buildings and experience what it's like to work in your sector. And why? I'll come back and talk a lot about that here in a few minutes. But I'm curious because I think Brian started out talking about the silver tsunami. How many people in here are boomers? Would you just raise your hand for a minute? You're a baby boomer. Raise your hand in here. Okay, room, look at them. They're leaving here in about 5 to 7 years. Okay, so that's the baby boomer. Where are the Xers at? Okay, Xers, yeah. Okay. Millennials? Millennials? Okay, you raise your hand. No, millennials can't wait for the boomers to leave and the Xers to leave. How about Gen Z? We don't have any Gen Z in the room, do we? Oh, sorry, we do. We have Gen Z in the room. This is why we are all concerned about talent. We are fundamentally in a competition for talent today. The old model, which many of us that are extras and above went to, which is we went off to school, wherever that was, to get a degree, and then moved to where a job is located. So raise your hand if you went and got a certificate or apprenticeship program or a degree, and then moved to where your job was. Raise your hand. Majority of the room. Today, that's not how it works. Today, we're in competition for talent, and people choose a sense of place first. And if you don't believe that's true, if you say, no, people don't choose where they want to live first or second, then look at Seattle. Look at the technology sector in Seattle. People are choosing a sense of place to live there first and work second. And if you need an anecdote and say, is that really true? How many of us remember Sears robots? Raise your hand. Do you remember Sears? Right? How many people remember the catalog? Yeah. Okay. Sears is down to less than 100 stores. Today has an R&D center in Seattle. Competing for talent. Why? Because that's where they're located at. So fundamentally, we're in a competition for talent across the state of Washington. So I thought I'd start by talking a little bit about then and now. And by the way, as we sit here, look at the windows there today. What's located across the street? The front door for educational opportunity. Our 34 community technical colleges play a fundamental role in providing the employer community in this state skilled, trained, and educated workforce that they so much need and so much desire. And at that campus, one of the majority minority campuses in our state, with 40+% Hispanic population during the students. First time to college students. It's about an opportunity for access right across the street. But let's go back 20 years. How many people lived here 20 years ago? Raise your hand. So study the next couple slides for me. In 2001, we had a population of just under 200,000 people. The hottest thing in town was that Anthony's restaurant had just opened on Columbia Point. And remember, you have to get there early, and you wait 45 minutes to an hour to get in. There was no opportunity for you if you chose to get a 4-year degree to do so in this community. You had to leave. So if you're a parent and you moved here 20 years ago and you're hoping your children had the opportunity to get that educational experience right here, they couldn't do that. If you get part of it here, you couldn't do it. And there was no STEM high school. There was no bioproduct science engineering laboratory. There was a partnership between PNL and WSU. But the greatest thing to get an experience for some in this community was the TriTech skill center. How many people are familiar with TriTech? Right? What an opportunity. We saw a couple of the students from TriTech up here. So 191,000, no opportunity for a 4-year degree. Anthony's restaurant was the hottest game in town. Still is, I think. I drove by there last night. It was a long wait. Today, 300,000 people call the Tri-Cities home. We have more hotels than you can probably shake a stick at here. Michael just had 600 people yesterday or 2 days ago at his annual meeting. We have a robust tourism industry here. How about this? 10 bachelor degree programs are available right across the street there. 20 down the road at WSU. Why? Because this community came together. Jeff Estes, wherever Jeff is at, Jeff, you're in the back there, PNL's leadership said, we need to have a 4-year option in this community. We need to create an opportunity to grow our own talent, and that's what happened when this community came together, went to Olympia and said, we want WSU Tri-Cities to be a 4-year university. And Delta High School, what a gem for this part of our state. Through the leadership of PNL, I see Paula Linden has a table over here. PNL saying, we believe STEM education is fundamental to all of our success. And whether it's in a certificate, a 2-year degree, or a 4-year degree, we need to excite young people, and we need to excite them much younger than we do today. And that's what Delta High School has become for our region. Think about wineries for a minute. In 2000, how many wineries existed in the state? Give me a number. 300. How many wineries do we have today in this state? Just over 1,000. How many are right here in this region? 300 plus. Think about that. 2,300 statewide. Today, 300 plus right here. So think just about how much this economy has fundamentally changed along the way. Delta High School. What an exciting opportunity for 400 plus students today to compete to get into an amazing program that provides so much opportunity for young people about career pathways. And we see a couple of these in the state. We see one at Aviation Tech High School over by Bowen Field in Seattle. We see a similar type of program in Spokane. This is a region, to the superintendent's point, that gets it, that really leads by example. And we should be very, very proud of it. And we talked about the workforce challenge, and Brian Jeffries just teed this up for a minute. Think about this number right here. 740,000 jobs will be open in 2016 and 2021 that you, the employers in this room, can't find a skilled, educated workforce for. That is all of Spokane County and half the Tri-Cities, to give you a sense of number. Think about that for a minute. All of Spokane County at 500,000, half the Tri-Cities, right? Relative to how many jobs are open that employers can't find the skilled, trained workforce that they're looking for. And 70% of those are going to need to have some type of post-K-12 experience by 2030. Certificate, apprenticeship program, 2-year degree, 4-year degree. But we are in a competition fundamentally for talent at the end of the day. And one of the extra roles that AWB serves as the State Chamber of Commerce is also the state's manufacturing organization. We expect to fill, because of the baby boomers leaving, and the growth in manufacturing, 4.6 million jobs across this country just in manufacturing alone. And in this state, it's about 100,000 jobs. And manufacturers today in this region employ about 6,000 people every day. Every day and every morning, 6,000 men and women wake up and go to work for a manufacturing company. Right here in this region alone. So the workforce challenge. What are employers saying to us? So this bus just happened to be here in the Tri-Cities a couple of weeks ago. We had a chance to see 70 companies across the state of Washington, 2,500 miles. The number one thing that employers told us was what? We can't find people. And it doesn't matter if you're in Pullman at Schweitzer Engineering Laboratory that has 300 plus openings today, or Cedar Woolley in Northwest Washington. It doesn't matter if you're in downtown Seattle, or if you're out of Port Angeles. The number one thing employers are telling us, it's not number one, it's number two, and I can't find that workforce that I so desperately need. So when we were in the Tri-Cities, we had a chance to highlight a couple different companies on this year's tour. Whether it be Cascade Natural Gas, we're talking about the skilled workforce that its linemen need. Over at Bernard Griffin, they're talking about the exciting pathways that exist for young people in the line industry. Over at Plastic Injection Molding, which is a great facility over by the Pacific Northwest National Lab. The number one challenge that manufacturers are saying to us today is I'm in the race for talent, and I'm committed to doing more than I ever have been, to do internships, to get young people in and on the shop floor, to see the great jobs that I have, and see how they really have got to put their STEM experience to work. So I thought I'd kind of close here with what are employers doing right now? Some of the best practices in the state. So if you're an employer in this room, I'm going to share with you 3 or 4 examples, and you may say, geez, we could do that. At Avista was the first company to participate in the Career Connected Washington program and said, boy, I don't need the government to tell me that I need to invest in my workforce. I'm going to go out and do it. And they created a lineman program to expose high school students to the career pathway of being a lineman. And in the Spokane region, the average lineman makes $70,000 a year. I'm going to pause there. $70,000 a year right out of high school. I wish that job existed for me maybe a long time ago. They created a program and said, hey, this is going to be an open source program. We're not going to hold on to this for us. We're going to share it with other employers across the region. So Wagstaff, which is another large manufacturer out in Spokane Valley, took the curriculum, improved upon it, and then said, hey, we're not going to just do this as a one-time shop. We're going to create a whole manufacturing program during the summer that brings both teachers and students into our manufacturing environment to understand what is it like to start a company, what is it like to work in a manufacturing company, and the specific skills that they would need along the way. In Southwest Washington, in fact, we had a Career Connect Washington meeting this week. I didn't make it there, but one of the strongest champions for this type of apprenticeship and internship work is Ben Vegapore. Ben Vegapore runs what's called CH America. Many people may not know that if you pulled out your cell phone, that the majority of the silicon wafers in your phone come from Vancouver, Washington, because we're the leading producer of silicon wafers in the country. Think about that for a minute. The leading producers of silicon wafers in the country come from Vancouver, Washington. And they are in a race to find the next generation of talent to come in and work for them. So they have created, along with Clark County Community College and the high school system there, to create an internship program where they get credit. Students receive pay, they come in there and they get great experiential hands-on opportunities. And the really cool thing is that they've been into this now for about 5, 6, 7 years. They're now hiring students back to them who've gone on to say, oh, I wanted to get an engineering degree, or I wanted to get this degree, but I had such an amazing experience working for you that I wanted to come back and go to work for you in the factory. And my last message I would say here is that we've talked a lot about high school students. We've got to get to middle school students early. If we don't get the students in the 5th and 6th grade, especially girls or disadvantaged boys, we've lost them, especially as it relates to manufacturing and some of the STEM career opportunities. So we've got to be committed to all being in this game together to give young people a chance to get in and see what we do every day and have the same opportunities that we're providing to many of us here. I've lost the clicker. So let me end with this slide here, because I think this slide really summarizes up top what the competition is like for talent. So we surveyed about 6,000 members of ours last summer and said, hey, what is the one thing you're doing to help attract talent to your company? And it's to pay for the first year of the mortgage for every employee of this company in Yakima. You see a number of things that other employers are doing on this list, but I'm going to end with the big picture there. How many people know what that is? So if you don't think the competition for talent, and specifically engineering talent, is fierce in Bellevue, that Axon is giving a Tesla Model 3 as a signing bonus to every new engineer that goes to work for them. How many would like a Tesla Model 3? I would like a Tesla Model 3. There's no signing bonus like that at AWB. So hey, we're all in this together. We've got to be committed to creating opportunities for young people all the way down to the middle school level to get in, to have experiential hands-on opportunities. For employers, we've got to be committed to the pipeline of workforce development, whether it's commitment to the K-12 experience, the post-K-12 experience, certificate, internships, apprenticeship programs, getting 2-year degrees and 4-year degrees. We have to have an all-of-the-above strategy. And we as Tri-Cityans know that we're doing pretty darn well right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Chris. So I'll ask just a couple of follow-up questions, and then if we have time, we'll open it up for questions from the floor. So you talk about, and this has been my experience as well, that the Tri-Cities is, in essence, setting the standard for working together well, which I absolutely would agree. I remember when I first arrived in town and was driving down Broadmoor and almost drove off the road, did a double take driving past Delta High School because I was trying to see what school it was, and I saw 3 different school districts' names on the building and thought, that doesn't happen. So the partnerships and the creativity that exists in this community. So if we're setting the standard, and you've shared some ideas, but what are you seeing elsewhere, things that we could, some practical strategies that we could be doing that are perhaps moving the needle elsewhere in other communities?
Well, there's a lot of innovation out there. Chris indicated a little bit of that on the employer side for sure. I know Boeing is like, yeah, but that's Boeing, right? They're so enormous. Boeing has created a Core Plus model that we're trying to replicate in multiple industries right now, essentially grad students for a very good chunk of the junior year and senior year, a combination of coursework and work. But mostly coursework. It gets them their math credits and their science credits, and they fulfill their grad requirements. But these are students who leave high school for a similar $50,000 to $70,000 opportunity in aerospace, and not just for the Boeing company. Of course, there are now supplier networks that are honoring that as well. So we've seen school districts, when they want to take risk, build pathways for students in partnership with business. Every district now is every district in the state has access to an ESD, and every ESD is now building out capacity to do some of this peer-connected work. So we're trying to put infrastructure in place, because there's a lot of businesses who say, I'd try, and a lot of school districts who say, hey, I'd give it a try, but how do we make those things actually come together? And so that kind of innovation is happening in a lot of places. We've got traditional models that do it as well. I would suggest that you're all going to invent things that don't work in the world of K-12 finance, and we're already figuring out how do we then reimburse school districts for something that doesn't exist yet in terms of their time and their effort. So we're willing to take the risk of this. Employers are, but that kind of Core Plus model is one that will get replicated and will be a lots of industry.
I'd add on to that, we've seen the Core Plus program now coming to the marine sector, and we've seen the marine community and Puget Sound adopt that curriculum, and I think they're really into it. We see Core Plus on this side of the state over at West Valley High School, for example, on Yakima. So I think Core Plus is in 20 different districts across the state. I'm close in that regard. I think the challenge and opportunity, you mentioned this so well, is Tri-Cities has 4 cities actually, 2 counties, right? And we found a way to build a high school that's shared by both sides of the river that came together. And I think it's a great example of what can be done and needs to be shared throughout the state. Ironically, when I think about some of the greater successes in this workforce arena, they come from Eastern Washington, whether in Yakima, there's some interesting things at West Valley High, right here in the Tri-Cities, Spokane as well, and in Vancouver. So I think we have an opportunity just to tell the story. How did we do it? What are the mistakes that we made? And as you, an employer, think about opening your doors, don't be hesitant. Be yes. Open the doors. Figure out the best way to bring young people in and expose them to the opportunities that exist in your company, because it's in your best interest to help grow your own talent.
Yeah, especially with the Durkin you shared, Ms. Johnson, about the manufacturing challenges of filling that pipeline. What are some things that we can do to help, I would say, dispel the myth about what folks, and especially parents, might still think about what traditional manufacturing used to look like, but it's very different now? How can we help tell that story, that it's not that?
Well, we have a robust manufacturing sector in the state. whether you start at the largest manufacturer and the biggest exporter in the world, or Boeing Company, Car trucks, and so many other manufacturers. When you get a chance to do like I do and walk through there, you see so much technology uniform throughout there. And when parents have a chance to get in there, they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize these were the opportunities that would exist for my son or my daughter. I didn't realize I could put the application together from welding and nap and stand and come over here to Car and help assemble trucks. We have some robust opportunities in manufacturing. I think part of our challenge as AWP is getting out and telling the story about the great career paths that exist in manufacturing, the great wages that exist in manufacturing, and the skills and backgrounds that young people will need to get those careers in the future.
I would add that no one thinks twice about the opportunity for young people to earn that pathway in the college credit if they're a traditional academic student. AP, college and high school, Cambridge, Running Start. We've built out these significant models. Every year we graduate a record number of kids who leave high school with an associate degree. But then we look at the majority of students who will work in our labor market are not going to be baccalaureate degree holders or higher. They're going to be students who have some certificate or credential, as Brian pointed out earlier and Chris is talking about, but less than a baccalaureate degree. When you say to that young person as a junior or senior, okay, how do we get you college level credit because you want to be in fabrication, you want to be an electrician, how can we get you in one of the trusts? Then suddenly it's, well, we don't really do that. And so one of our challenges in the education system in partnership with you all is we have to open up the doors of Running Start to students who don't go there for the traditional academics, though there is lots of rigor to it. But I see no reason why you have to graduate from high school, and hopefully we hang on to you for a couple of years in your junior, senior year while you're bored out of your mind and questioning your purpose in school. But what you really wanted to do is you want to become an electrician. So why is it at 16 or 17 your junior year, we can't send you over to CBC, a full-time Running Start student, like we do a traditional academic student? The state pays that at an $8,000 per student rate in Running Start rate. And suddenly that student has a $16,000 or $20,000 investment in them, paid through K-12 basic ed dollars because they're still a high school student. But they leave that institution with a high school diploma and they're ready to become in the workforce. So it's all there. It is all there. Changing the mindset of K-12 and changing the mindset, I think, of higher ed in some ways to say every student is a college student. And college has to stop being defined as a traditional academic student who's transferring to the university. It's anyone in a post-secondary credential pathway, as Brian indicated.
Okay, one more. It is mind-blowing to me to think that our state is number 48 for college going. When you do think about this, the amount of innovation and skills that exist here. Are there states that you look to think that, okay, they are setting the standard of best practices for college going, that there are other states that we can be looking at to see what they're doing?
Well, we do look at those states. Indiana and Kentucky and some other places, I think, do some pretty remarkable work in terms of getting students on the pathway of credentials and post-secondary that look a little different than us. I always look at those numbers a little carefully. They're very accurate numbers. We import a lot of talent, which is why we appear to be so high in overall education levels, but we import a lot of that talent. We were a state, kind of building out our system post-World War II. So the East Coast built out massive universities, public and private. There's a massive culture of four-year college going. The West Coast built out a community college system. And it's highly accessible and fantastic. But along with that sort of came the culture of let me go into manufacturing, let me go into natural resource work, and then I can always find that thing later. So we have a pretty high participation rate, but oftentimes it's much later in life, and a lot of those students get what they need and then they leave without actually getting that degree or that certificate. I think our challenge here is how do we get to that pipeline earlier, get them that work they want, maybe that income flow, but get the learning while they're younger. We will save a pile of money in social service costs and criminal justice costs and other things if we engage significantly earlier in that. And then again, define it as more than going to a college and getting a degree. If you are in one of the training trusts of labor or you're in an apprenticeship program and you complete your hours, that is college. And we have to recognize that as something and put it in that group.
I think the only thing I would add on to Chris's comment there is we also work with parents. The emerging industries and legacy industries. You asked the question about getting folks into manufacturing and all. It's a very different environment today. And we've got to talk to our young people about the great careers that exist there. I joke that the $400 an hour attorney is going to pay the $800 an hour plumber to fix their toilet. This is a there's such a shortage for plumbers, for example, in certain parts of the state. So the skilled trades is one that we need to do more work in.
I'm going to add one thing because I think it's so significant for the immediate thing you can do. Everyone in the room is like, what can I do? We have a couple of employers, I know for sure on the west side, I suspect they're here, who are building summer programs for K-12 teachers, classroom teachers, and counselors to say, you think of what I do as a 19th century concept or a 20th century concept. I need you in to see all the technology that's happening in wood manufacturing, in agriculture, in the lab, you name it. It is so different than the perception of so many people in traditional K-12 education. So bring them in. Our teachers need clock hours. We'll work with you. The ESDs will work with you. When you bring a teacher or counselor into a manufacturing facility in particular, they talk to their students very differently. And so they say, I have been there, I have seen it, I cannot believe the diversity of jobs available here. And they begin to talk about their students in a real positive way about their pathway. And you break down the university's the default, and if that isn't what your thing is, let's find something for you. We can't talk about these as alternatives. They are legitimate parallel pathways. So bring teachers and counselors into your place of employment. Show them what you do there. They will be the best recruiters you ever have for steering talent.
If I can add on to that, P&L, wherever they're at, here in the room, sitting over here to our left, we work with them. Paul, what's the number last year? 50? So teachers into P&L for a 2-week program, expose them to the different career STEM and math opportunities that exist, so they can see what that looks like at P&L, go back to the classroom, and educate, inform, and excite their students about career paths in that regard. So this is another example that's happening right here.
Okay, I think we have maybe 10 minutes, and I think there's mics, a couple different places. See one over here. So if there are questions. See Ms. Linden over here has a question.
So thanks, I think this is really helpful. One of the things, an observation that you all have made is that it requires so many stakeholders. It's the parents, it's the educational system, it's academics, it's universities, it's employers, just across the board. So it seems to me that what's increasingly important in order to accelerate this really huge challenge is to bring these folks together. And I was hoping that you could comment a little bit on the role of conveners. So clearly, Association of Washington Business is a convener. The Washington State STEM Education Foundation is a convener. The Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce is a convener. It feels like the role of conveners is so much more important in order to address this challenge. And I was just hoping you could comment on that.
I'll just say that Career Connect, for example, the legislation that got through has dedicated money for it. I think that entire effort recognized, to the heart of your point, that there has to be conveners in every community connecting education sectors and business. We're building out that network right now in all the ESDs. Some of them are also the STEM networks in their region, so they've got a real history of that. We will increasingly put that expectation on the public and private sector to make that happen. It is everything at this point in time. The hard part, I will just observe, is we talk 2 different languages. Education has its own language, like it's as bad as the military, right? At times with their acronyms. And business says, I don't know anything about that. I need talent. And you speak a different language because it's hard for you to understand that when you take on a 16-year-old, there's some things we need them to do or they don't get to graduate from high school. So part of it is that language and culture exchange in solving problems, and that's what I think the conveners can help do.
I would add on to that. The role of convener is really important to talk about regional solutions. And at the end of the day, Worforce becomes a regional solution, a regional challenge state. So someone's got to own the ball of calling people together, playing the role of bringing all the different parties, like the superintendent talked about, to the table and break down the lexicon to say, hey, what are we all trying to get done in this community? And what are the strategies? And how do we tactically move the ball and make visible progress along the way? I think that's the other piece that we're all after, is how can we measure success along the way? Someone's got to play the role of convener, and in some parts of our state, the ESDs are doing that, in other parts it's GSI and Spokane, and others. And so the role of convener is fundamentally, critically important for success.
Can I go first? Do you mind? Thank you very much. Nick Bumpus, I'm the president of Central Washington Building Trades. Your comment, Chris, actually goes right into what I was looking for.
We're twins, you gotta see which one it is.
Yeah, AWB, Chris. Your comment about a convener, right, goes right into what I was going to ask you. So I am a plumber, pipe fitter by trade, and we're quite $800 an hour, but it is pretty close.
And it came with a Tesla, congratulations.
That's right. And I can tell you, through our apprenticeship programs with the trades, whether it be iron workers or electricians, one of our biggest challenges, a lot of people say, we have a hard time getting apprentices into the program. That's, from my experience, simply untrue. Where we have our biggest challenge is getting our school boards and our city councils and our local business leaders to invest in policies locally that really take advantage of those resources. So when we're building new schools, when we're building public works in our community, it would be great that if everybody actively invested in the programs like TriTech or CBC, or the accredited apprenticeship programs in our community and say, you know what, when we build a school in the Tri-City, we're going to build it using youth enrolled in an apprenticeship program. We're going to make sure that we have responsible bidder criteria and we're getting local Washington State businesses to hopefully win those bids and not outsourcing for contractors from Alabama or Louisiana or other places like that. So I guess my question is, what can we do to promote that message as a community to make sure we're holding school board officials, city councils, business leaders accountable for implementing policy that actually affects what we're all trying to do here?
I would start with that. Thanks for the question, Dick. The role of convener can't be a two-way conversation, by the way. It just can't be business, for example, where you were going, business and education. Because in education, there's a bunch of stakeholders in there as well, right? There's a two-year system, a four-year private, a four-year public system. And believe it or not, they all don't talk to each other that often as well. And so, the role of convener, I don't think I did that. The role of convener is critically important, like sitting down and talking about what is our regional strategy, who are all of our partners in this region that can advance and move the ball on this. And you talked a little bit about the apprenticeship programs. That is not uniform across the state. There are parts of the state that don't have CTE programs, no wood shop, no metal shop programs. And so when we talk about manufacturing day, getting young people excited to work with their hands, recognize that that's not a shared opportunity across the state of Washington.
Thank you. Randy Hayden with the Port of Pasco, and I'm joined by two great local businesses that happen to be housed in Port of Pasco facilities, Cobra Group and Agari Products. And they're a smaller business, and I really appreciate the examples you gave of how a business can really help students get that Career Connect link. And I'm wondering if you've got some examples to inspire us for smaller businesses. And we'll take
Randy, that's a great question. And one of the things we've worked on at AWB is around a toolkit for small employers to say, what is an internship? What's it look like? It's not about getting coffee, right? It's about having an opportunity to come in, get a set of experiences, but you don't know what you don't know as a small business. Oh, is this going to be, is there a lot of liability here? How do I, what's expected of me in the classroom and all? So we've worked really hard to create a toolkit. And I can give you some examples of small businesses who've been able to say, hey, we're going to take one intern this summer. And we're going to bring them in, we're going to give them an opportunity to be exposed to all facets of our business. But what they're asking for is a uniformed experience about saying, just help me guide me through this process. So we're not far also, Randy, I'm teasing something, but we're not far from announcing something here probably in the next 120 days around this. That also matches large employers and small employers to say, hey, as you do some internship things, here's some things to think about. Here's some best practices that we've experienced as we've brought interns into our size of companies as well. But I think recognized internships are not just all about for big guys, it's about small, medium, and big employers.
Up in the Mid-Tau Valley, our school district that kind of dominates that area geographically. Very small school district. Most of the employers up there are very tourist-based, actually. It's a lot of folks who come over for winter activity, summer activity, a lot of arts, a lot of artists in the community. They basically require every student in that school district to at some point have a mentor and some kind of work-based learning experience. We have ways to reimburse the school district for that. So they work with that artist and say, hey, you only have 2 employees. But what if our students spent 5 hours or 10 hours a week with you? How can we build a meaningful learning environment for them? And then they accumulate hours, and maybe it's 100 hours over a school year. We actually can pay the school district and give that student learning credit for half the time. It's a 2-to-1 model. And so that student actually keeps building momentum towards their diploma. They don't lose out on that by having done their time there. a very small employer gets a student who's experienced to the world of work, and they already, of course, begin the recruiting pipeline, and the entire school district assigns somebody to navigate this with all the employers. That is what we're talking about building out statewide right now with these regional networks. And at some point, individual school districts will hire these folks when they see the value of that. But it's happening in the smallest of places, but it's a very personal relationship. I know that employer, I know the student is interested in that, and somebody has to put in the time to do that, which is a serious plug for why OSPI is pursuing significantly more counselors, by the way. This doesn't happen without middle school and high school counselors at ratios that are far more human than what we do today.
Randy, let me add on to that for Richard there. Part of it is also raising your hand and say, yes, I'm in it, I'm interested, right? And going back to the convener table and saying, hey, I've got some opportunities in my business. I'll just share one anecdote from our bus tour. We stopped by a in the garage company that's been a 40-year supplier to Boeing company. Husband and wife team. But for 40 years, they've made a part on every Boeing airplane that's ever been built. Rosemary Bresker is their name. They take 10 internships from students from Aviation High School in Seattle to bring them into their garage that's located down so far down the road you can't see the bus down the road, into their garage, and every day they go in there to work together. So just because you're a small business doesn't mean you can't play an important role about creating a pathway and creating an exciting opportunity for young people to understand what it's like to work in your business. And you have a really cool business given all the patents you've had and you've built over there, Richard. So raise your hands and get involved.
Well, Chris and Chris, our time is up, but thank you both so much for being with us this afternoon in the Tri-Cities. It was great hearing from your experiences, but also just being the strategic leaders that you are and helping us do this work. So thank you.
I don't know if I can get that picture out of my head. Well, today's luncheon really focused on more high-level strategy and kind of the big vision for our community. But this morning, we had the privilege of having folks run breakout sessions that really talked about tactics. And we will have some more of those sessions coming up here. We'll actually start them at 1:30 because we're going to end a little bit early. So at 1:30, there will be 3 more sessions. And if you can stay, we'd love to have you. There's more details in the materials in front of you, but you can see the general titles here on the board. We hope you can stay because we're going to give away 2 baskets here at the close of the meeting, but the last 4 are going to be given out at those breakouts to entice you to spend another hour with us. So to find your way to those meetings, as this convenes, you'll head out the doors, go right, go to the end of the hall, go left, and go out in the main area, and you'll see signs directing you to those various meeting rooms. Superintendents, you are headed to a private meeting directly across the hall in the Oak Pine room. We will have our table hosts will go back to their tables for just a few minutes as the room clears. So if you haven't had a chance to stop by and see some of this great information that's available, we encourage you to do that. And we really want to, on behalf of the board and the staff, thank all the speakers that spoke at lunch, our breakout session folks. Many came from across the state to support our community today, and we really appreciate that. And we definitely appreciate our student ambassadors who took the time to join us today. So every single person in this room gets a chance to play a role in this party. When we talk about conveners and opportunity, every single person has a way that they can contribute and help to build out this Career Connect system. If you think you're too busy, if you've got just way too much on your plate, I would like you to meet Desiree Wolfgram. Desiree is right there. Would you stand, please, because you're kind of tiny. Okay, so Desiree just gave birth to twins. That makes her the proud mama of 6 beautiful blonde-haired little children. She's also a mechanical engineer at Energy Northwest. And 7 years ago, she saw how important it is to reach down into the early grades. Chris, you're right about reaching into middle school. We think we got to get to the elementaries as well. And Desiree saw that need, and she created, in all of her spare time, Kids Engineering Day. And it's an awesome program. It grows every year. She rotates it around to the different cities. And she is happy to talk to anyone who might be interested in learning how to grow that program in your own company. So we know that schools, K-12, higher ed, we're working to figure out how to hire enough staff. And Chris, we're hoping that you send us more money to do that, because it takes staff to drive this infrastructure, not just counselors, but staff that can actually coordinate a lot of these different pieces and to grow this system. And we also know that our nonprofits, our community-based organizations, Tiffany Scott's back there, they've got a great youth re-engagement center that they've just opened. Take all of those pieces. But as we build that system, if the communities don't step up to fuel them, they're not going to go anywhere. So all these great ideas about new internships and new career-based learning opportunities won't happen if we don't all make it happen. And we know that the Tri-Cities is the Make It Happen place, and so we look forward to working with you. When we announced the elected officials, not everybody stood up. There's a lot of elected officials in this room. State, Port, and then, like I said, we've got the State Board of Education here. We've got the Chambers, TriDec, Visit Tri-Cities. We've got a huge sphere of influence that is represented in this room. And I think it doesn't take one convener. It takes every one of you that have such impact in our community to drive out this conversation, to make sure that the folks that you work with are informed and engaged and figure out how to build and work together, because we see this every day with kids. If you give them that vision, if you let them see, just like Carlos, stand up again, because it was just so great to have you here. Because Jacobs took the time to build that 5-session program and bring the kids out to the mock-up, you've changed his life. And when kids have a vision, they'll break down a lot of the barriers that we as adults try to figure out. They'll figure it out, but they have to have the vision. And nobody can give that to them but us. And so we look forward to working with you to continue to build out the system, to grow this. And again, we're going to give away those baskets now. We look forward to giving out 2 baskets. And the way we're going to do that is, as you get up to leave, look under your table. If you find a piece of gum, that doesn't count. But if you find a piece of paper that says that you've won a basket, please come up and pick up your baskets. And thank you so much for being here today.